Hello, everyone. It's really been a long time. After much commitment, after much words and everything, I still didn't show up. I still didn't come around. And the question I asked myself, of course, I had engagement and things I was doing, but I would be lying to myself if that was the reason why I didn't show up. I didn't record podcast episodes as I plan to do every week. When you really don't want to do something, can cook up really, really good excuses. You can find really, really good facts to purport your points and support them to do and to just make you really look really good. Yeah, I knew that was the issue. So in today's podcast episode, let's talk about the difficulty of writing. Why is everything so difficult? You know, why is it difficult? Is it because that's the way it is for everyone, or it's because we have made it seem so? Now, before I go deep into the difficulty of writing, I'd like to address a couple of things as regards why I've not been showing up and why I've not been consistent. First, I I believe I believed, I thought that the things I have are not good enough to start what I need to start. And when I looked at it, I'm like, put it things in perspective. It's not like it's the best of the best, but it can get the job done. And if it was probably in the past, some of the tools and equipment we have are so awesome. Like it has put a lot of things in our palm. Like literally, it has put a lot of things in our palm. And I look at it, I'm like, okay, maybe when I have a great mic, I'll be able to make a podcast. Maybe when I have a good phone and a good camera, I'll be able to make a video podcast. Until then, let me just relax. Let me just take a break. And I'm like, dude, it's all like, wait, let's be real here. Is it that the thing is overwhelming, or is it that you just don't want to do it, and so you cook up these excuses to support yourself? And I'm like, well, video podcast grows a lot, and for right now, I don't have a lot of listeners. There's 2 to 3 persons that listen to me consistently every every episode. I'm like, yeah, okay, 2 to 3 persons listen to you every episode. Okay, but there are a lot of podcasts that are audio only podcasts, and people listen to it, and they've grown those podcasts. So what are you saying now? I'm like, and what? What exactly are you saying? Okay, so what is the problem? The problem in the first place is because every time I show up to record an episode, I critique myself. I accuse myself. I bring up points to say that I'm not good enough, which is true. I am not good enough. But I never said I was good enough. I only came out as a friend to record an episode. Well, when I do say that, it makes things easy. Yeah, because it reframes the perspective. And when I reframe the perspective, a lot of things I think there are problems are not really problems. They don't even exist. It's like I'm creating problems for myself so I can suffer, so I can torture myself. But there were no problems in the first place. Like it looked like things were really hard, but when you looked at it, really, there were not really problems. So I'm like, okay, I have the equipment, I have the tools to record an audio in podcast for now. Hopefully in the future we'll go into video podcast, which is great and awesome. So I'm like, okay, what do I talk about? What do I do? There's really nothing exciting. I would love to do crazy, awesome experiments, do writing routines and of great writers, text, all those things. I'm like, yeah, those are fancy, awesome ideas, but what would it take to do writing routine? First, in order to test the writing routine of a famous writer, you would have to break your own routine. And a lot of things, your survivor is based on that routine for now, considering that writing is not a full time stuff and you're not just sitting at home where you can just, oh, let's test this routine today. Like, literally, man, your survivor, your routine, your survivor depends on your routine. Yeah, okay, okay, I can't do writing routines experiments from famous writers for now. Okay, what about crazy experiments where I tested this, I tried this? Well, you can't do all of those. You could do some of them, but you can't do all of those things. And I'm like, okay, so what then can I do with the tools I have? What then can I do? Because if I spend so much time focusing on what I cannot do with what tools I do not have, the ideas that are just beyond me, the skills I do not have, the techniques I cannot do, the books I have not written, the stories I have not written, the uh the experiments I cannot do for now, I will end up doing nothing. So I ask myself, let's change the question. What can you do? As basic as it might seem, as simple as it might seem, as not so interesting as the idea might seem, what can you do with what you have for now? And I just keep quiet, relax, and I'm calm for some time to hear the response I get. And I'm like, you can record episodes talking about your life, reacting to things that are happening, uh, breaking and analyzing a lot of concepts and ideas that are going on. But then you're like, okay, that's great. That's awesome. That's wonderful. That's a great idea. But then how do you know what will be interesting to the writers, to the people that listen to your podcast? And I'm like, I just make stuff and they realize that whatever is interesting to them. I'm like, no, young man, that's not the approach. Let's be real. If you having a discussion with a friend and you're like, oh, I don't really know what's interesting to them, well, the best way to find what's interesting to them is to ask them what is interesting to you. Like literally ask as simple as that, dude. Ah, I'd love to have a conversation with you, but I really don't know what you're interested at. What are you interested? What do you love to do? What do you love to talk about? What are some crazy dreams and imaginations you have? What are some crazy experiments you like to do? And what do you really hate, so that we can talk about these things and you know have a great conversation that we're both interested in, that we both love having. Not a conversation that you're like, oh God, do I have to live through this? And I'm asking you right now, you're that friend, I'm asking you right now. I wish I knew your name. I could just call your name like from across the podcast. But I know you listen. Right, I see it in the dashboard every time. You listen to my podcast, even though it's not so good. You listen. And so I'm asking you, what what would you love to see? What kind of a podcast would you love to see? I'm trying to imagine and face something, but I want you to be part of creating that podcast. I want you to be part of bringing the idea so I can make something for you. I don't want to make stuff and say, okay, check if you like this. I want to make, oh, what do you like? Let's make that stuff. You grab. You can reply. If you're on Spotify, you can answer the polls. But if you're not on Spotify, you can reach out to me at buildwriting.com/speak and you'll be able to send me a message. But if you don't want to use that option, I feel like giving two options will overwhelm you. You can send me an email at mechi@buildwriting.com and I would be able to receive your message and factor that into consideration when making a podcast episode. So now we have looked at what the problems could be. So now I'm like, okay, talk about your normal life, what you're writing, what you love to do. And if you're not writing, talk about how you're not writing, why you don't feel like writing. And when you talk about why you don't feel like writing long enough, you'll start writing. I'm like, okay, yeah. Just basically talk about what you're doing. Like, you talk about why you're not writing. Like, what's leading you not to write? Why are you suffering from whatever you're suffering from, if that even exists, or it's just a concept you've created in your mind to feel like you're suffering or not. I'm like, yeah, that's it. Yeah, just talk about it. Great, awesome, wonderful. There is no week, there is no day that passes that without me thinking about writing. So why then do you say you do not have stuff to talk about writing? Okay, that's great. Okay, so now let's talk about the difficulty of writing. Why is writing so difficult? Is it really difficult in the first place? Well, I think most of the time we've been trained to realize that writing is a thing of the internal, is a thing of the mind, of inspiration, of being inspired. And unlike other jobs, unlike other professions, you you don't really say, "Oh, I'm a writer," and you really need to be inspired to create something. Sorry, oh, I'm a painter. I really need to be inspired. Yeah, like yeah, you the inspiration. Yeah, or I'm a chef. I really need to. Of course, you're creative. You need to be inspired and stuff like that. But you have a system that allow you to create good work with or without inspiration. And if you have inspiration, that's a bonus. Awesome, wonderful, fantastic. But with or without inspiration, you create good work. Like, imagine if the world relied on people getting inspired. I don't know. Like, if the doctor wanted to do surgery, and like, I don't really think I can do the surgery, because I'm not inspired. Like, the muse is not just whispering to me. Well, but like, but medicine is different, surgery is different, and all the stuff is different from writing. You and I know this stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's true. That's true. It's different, but why? And you have to be that different. Why? We care so much about the result. I care so much about the result. I care so much about the output. I care so much about how good and how great the output will be, or how not good or how not great the output will be, that I end up not even writing. Like you're like, oh, there's a contest, awesome contest. And I'm speaking from experience. Like there was a contest, a writing contest that I wanted to participate in. It was a microfiction contest. I like the odds of me winning was kind of like high, and but even if I didn't win, it would have been a great experience, great attempt. But then I'm like it's not like it tells me literally, but when you analyze the thought process after the action has been taken, you realize that this is where the problem is. I'm like, okay, if I do not participate, I cannot fail. And that is a very terrible, terrible, terrible mindset. It's a very terrible, terrible approach to writing and approach to every other thing in my life. It's a very terrible one. And it's one of those things that you know that, oh, this is a problem, but action and thoughts are disconnect at that point. You're like, ah, yeah, I know this stuff, but it's more like as a writer, when you giving someone else's work, like give feedback to it, you start tearing it to pieces. This. But then you give your work and like, ah, no, I can't really see anything. Well, but you know these techniques. Why can't you see it in your own work? And let's just, no, I don't know. Let's just say, maybe, probably because I don't know. Like I don't really know, but I know the stuff, but I just don't know. And looking back, I'm like, the outcome was so much fixed on it. Like how it would turn out is so much of a big deal that we realize that the best option is not to even attempt, not to even get into the ring. If you're not in the ring, you can't be beaten, you can't lose. I'm like, dude. As much as I say this now, I realize that that is a terrible, terrible mentality. It's a terrible mindset. It's a terrible approach to writing. Really, really terrible approach. So I'm like, what other approach do we have? Well, have a practice. Yeah, have a practice. When your when your goal is the practice, showing up and writing is the win. And you can always win. As long as you show up, as long as you write, you have won. And I know it makes winning easy, but then you then write and you create stuff, and having a great piece of work is a bonus. Awesome, wonderful. But showing up, writing, practicing, that is the win. The experience is the win. It's more like if you uh let's say you're a marathon runner and you like really 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 long marathon, and you sign up to run for whatever context or competition, but your goal is to run a marathon. That's your goal. As long as you show up and you run the marathon, it doesn't matter which position you are. The experience of win, the experience of showing up, that is your win. And what happens is you run the marathon and you end up winning. That's great. That's awesome. But for you, the experience is your win. And when you show up, you would have an experience, most definitely. When you show up, you'd have something to talk about, something to write about. Yeah, but only if you show up. If you don't show up, there will be no experience. There will be nothing to talk about. And yeah, that's great. Yeah. So now I'm looking and I'm asking myself, okay, what's the new approach to this stuff? Well, maybe I should take more context. Maybe taking the contest and applying for the contest should be just to go, not necessarily winning. Maybe experimenting, trying things and testing things out should be my goal, and not necessarily, oh, what you win when you do this stuff, when you do that. And I know I did say that, oh, I don't have time, I don't do this, I don't have time. But I'm like, dude, are you really serious? Do you really not have time? Like you spend time talking, chatting, discussing about irrelevant things with friends. Do you really not have time? Or is it just one of those excuses you make up to make yourself feel good for postponing or not showing up as a writer? Okay, we've talked about so many things about the writing life. How do we move? How do we move on? Yeah, how do we move on? Yeah, what's the next steps we should be taking? At this point in time, it's when we talk about the practice. This is just an opportunity for me to talk about National Poetry Month, which is also National Poetry Writing Month. In April, we're in March. And in April, we'll be writing a poem every day. We'll be reading a poem every day. And we'll be sharing a poem every day. It's going to be hectic, challenging. It's going to be demanding. But it's one of those things that when you do it, at the end of the day, you realize that it worked on you and you are really, really happy that you participated in it. And so just to tell you and just to let you know so you can start preparing. I'll talk about more details in forthcoming podcast episodes to help you prepare for the yeah the what I call it, was it challenge, yeah, National Poetry Writing Month. I'll give a framework and a system, and also link to our Facebook groups that we could join for feedback, accountability, and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm really 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 grateful. I and this is just a lesson to everyone out there, every other writer too. I feel most of the time the fact that you keep coming back to writing, it's a win. It's not a win we want. It's not what we envision to be. Oh, this is the desired outcome. This is what the life would be. But the fact that we keep showing up, we keep coming back, even though we fall, not really fall, but per se, now I'm saying fall, it looks like it's a religion. But the fact that we keep showing up and writing and coming back to the goal over and over again, it's a win. Yeah, it's not a win we want, but it's a win to start with. Most people don't even write. Most people have forgotten about it. Most people, like writing is not even an option, but we will still have it in our mind. And we're scared, we're afraid that if we let go of that thought, what will become of us? Like really, what will become of us? So thank you guys for listening to the episode. I really want to hear from you. Send me your messages in buildwriting.com/speak, and I'll be happy to receive them. But right now, we would be sticking with 2 episodes in a week. Like it's a bi-weekly podcast for now. Later on, we'll go back to what we call weekly podcast. But for now, it's a bi-weekly podcast. Let me work on my skills. Let me talk and discuss, have conversation with my friend you. Let me move on over why I cannot do it and start doing it. There are millions of ideas, a little of things we could chat over. Why am I saying that I cannot start a podcast? Why am I saying that I cannot write? Well, maybe I'm not good enough. Well, maybe that's a sign. Am I really good enough, or am I just making things really hard? I don't write that much. Why don't you write that much? Maybe you should fix that. Yeah. So it's a sign. So not everything is a problem, for example. It's just a compass that once you handle it, then it's not really a big deal of a deal. Because then when you write, you have things to talk about. Yeah. Yeah, basically that's it. Yeah. When you write, you have things to talk about. Once again, thank you so much for listening to the podcast episode. My name is Oyemichi Nwakonam, and you've been listening to the Build Writing podcast. On the next episode, peace. Until next time, keep writing.